He's a very light man.
Dude has been around, he's seen some things.
He's kind of like a grandfather figure.
He's really nice and organized.
Dude is so well-cultured and well-versed in everything, from poetry to history to world languages to mathematics to engineering.
He brightens up everyone's day like no one else.
He's very easygoing.
He's wunderbar, which means wonderful in Norwegian.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim. Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
Mr. Fagerheim.
He's always willing to tell stories.
I like his poetry on the announcements. He always starts the class with a story about his life, and it's really interesting.
He's like really carefree, and he always makes the learning environment really nice and positive.
He always wants to listen, and then he always has insightful comments.
I know that the students will listen.
We were having a test that none of us knew was gonna happen. So then he gave us a solid 15 minutes before the test to review.
We celebrated his birthday with cake. He prints out all the names of the students and he says who's absent.
He remembered me from 7th grade. And I just think that's like, I always think about that.
And I always feel completely comfortable when he's in my classroom covering for me.
And he always does what substitute teachers are supposed to do.
They never have to worry about if the lesson's going to be completed.
I know that everything's going to be done exactly how I like it, and it's going to be organized.
If you give him a task to teach, he will research and make his own worksheets.
He actually gets stuff done.
They're going to learn something worthwhile.
All right, so you wanted to know something about my background, something about me growing up and how I got to where I am today. I think any story of any life has to begin with parents, and I suppose almost everybody in the school must know that I'm Norwegian, but I'll have to confess that I'm only 50% Norwegian. And so my grandfather made the decision that in 1927 he would come to America to find his fortune. Well, my father, at the end of 1926, when my grandfather made the announcement, decided, well, what he'd like to do is to go ahead of the rest of the family and prepare the way. And so he somehow sneaked into the place where my grandfather had the tickets for the ship, took his out and took it to Oslo and exchanged it for a ticket in December of 1926. And he came by himself. And this fascinates me because I wonder, how in the world did he expect to prepare the way for the rest of the family? Here he was, 17 years old, could not even speak English. And he used to frequently go into a little mom and pop grocery store in which there was a teenage girl who would hang out there. It was her father's store. And he made the acquaintance of her, and time came to be that he asked her to marry him. And so it came to be that my mother, one day back in 1937, or 1 week I should say, within a 1 week period of time, she turned 17, she graduated from high school, and she got married, all in the same week. And my father then took her off to New Jersey, away from her family. So here she was, a 17-year-old girl, just barely 17, comes to New Jersey, married to this Norwegian. I'll tell you, as I grew up in Pleasantville, New Jersey, which is near Atlantic City on the mainland. And one of the things that dominated my life growing up as a boy was baseball. Besides baseball, what was important in my life growing up was music. And beginning in 7th grade, I started taking piano lessons, and then my piano teacher said that I should take organ lessons, which I did beginning in 9th grade. My teacher let me know there were several other places that needed organists for the summer. And all these were important because they led up to me getting a job for my senior year in high school of being the organist for the Baptist church in town. Now the reason this is important is because the organ was right up front in the church, right in the middle, and down in a little bit of a recessed area. So the people in the congregation, when they looked up, saw a pulpit right in the middle of the church, but in back of the pulpit, they could see the head of the organist, which was me. And right in front of the organ were 2 rows of seats for the choir. And right in the seat closest to the organ seat was a sophomore girl whom I came to learn pretty quickly, was named Judy, and I thought it was pretty nice. And so as the year went along, I invited her out, and it came to be that in March of my senior year, I gave her my high school class ring. And I've told many students in school about this, but anyway, I gave it to her on March 27th. March 28th, she gave it back to me. March 29th, I gave it back to her, and she's had it ever since. And we've now been also married for what will be 60 years.
How did you meet Mr. Fagerheim?
Well, we both have a different story. He went to high school. We both went to the same high school. And then he said he met me when he was playing the organ at the church, but that's not quite true because he was also playing, he played the organ in several places, right?
Yeah.
At the same time. And one of the places he played was for the Christian Science Church over in Ocean City. And then he applied for the job at the Baptist church where I went to church. And they had questions about why would somebody play at the Christian Science Church? And then, you know, and so anyway, my father vouched for him, so he got the job because he was dating me at the time. So anyway, and so that's how we met. We went to high school together. You could tell him about your first date with me.
The only thing I remember about it is afterwards I thought, well, you're supposed to take a girl out someplace to get something to eat. But where do you go? There's not a lot of places around.
There was no McDonald's.
So we went to a diner. And we sat down at the booth in the diner. And I asked her what would she like. And she didn't order anything. She finally ordered a Coke.
I thought I ordered a hamburger, but
no, you didn't order anything.
I couldn't eat it. I was too nervous.
I don't know why she should have been nervous around me. Every Sunday night, I was at her house with her.
Sometimes there were other kids there too.
And we watched TV until 11 o'clock, and we'd have an ice cream soda. And sometimes you sat on my lap,
and
right in front of your parents.
Weren't Phyllis and sometimes they were with us, I think, Phyllis and Charles.
I started looking at colleges, but not really seriously until the end of my senior year at high school. And I'd look at a few liberal arts schools, and I thought, well, a liberal arts education is kind of a background for almost anything. Maybe it doesn't prepare me for anything specific, but I thought it'd be a good general education, so I decided that that's what I would do. And I chose Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I just took a kind of a general course, did not have to declare a major. I decided during my first year that since I am basically a shy person, I thought it might be good for me if I joined a fraternity. And I did. Towards the end of my freshman year, I made two important decisions. The first was I decided that construction work wasn't so bad after all. The second was that I knew that as soon as I finished school, I was going to get married. Now, the first thing, construction work. If I'm going to go into construction work, what I really need is not a liberal arts degree, and so I decided to go ahead and major in accounting. In my sophomore year, I was the fraternity steward. In my junior year, I was the treasurer of the fraternity. I drove every weekend, every Friday afternoon after school, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, back down to Pleasantville, New Jersey, and had a choir practice Friday night, and then we sang and played the organ on Sunday, and went back to school on Sunday nights. So that was a good experience. Then in my senior year, I was president of the Interfraternity Council. And back up a little bit, because after the end of my freshman year, my girlfriend and I had decided we would get married at the end of college. But then in the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that that was an awfully long time to wait. And maybe we'd get married after my junior year. And so that was our plan. And then when the sophomore year was almost over, and we had one more year to wait, we decided, well, another year's too long also. And so we set a wedding date between Christmas and New Year's of my junior year in college. And for my senior year in college, we had an apartment off campus. It was the first floor of what had been a row house. So we had a living room and a kitchen and a bathroom, and that's it. Our living room was also our bedroom. That's all there was to it. And I like to tell people that when I graduated from college, I graduated with a degree in business administration. I graduated with a wife. I graduated with a daughter, and with $18 in the bank to start out life afterwards.
So what was it like during college years?
Well, he was in college, and I stayed home because we knew we were getting married from the time he went to college. And I worked for a year instead of going to college. And he wrote every day, and I wrote every day. I don't know if do you still have your letters?
I have some of them.
I have mine, but anyway. And then we were married at Christmas time of his junior year, right? 50?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I went up there to live for his senior year at college. So, and we lived on $10 a week.
She graduated
2 years
at the end of my sophomore year in college. So in my junior year in college when we got married. So we got married 6 months after she graduated high school. That's why she didn't go to college. And she was #1 in her class. Yeah. She probably could have gotten a scholarship. She couldn't have gone to college. And I remember writing from college, writing to her and saying, "Are you sure that you're going to be satisfied with not going to college by us getting married?" And she said yes.
Well, then
she might not have been happy, but at least she stayed with me all these years.
I hated my first job. I worked at Prudential, and I didn't like it at all. But anyway, I did substitute, and I enjoyed that when our girls were little. Well, they weren't real little. Well, yeah, because we had 2 boys. No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
Well, we had the 2 boys, but we had the 3 girls, and then when I got pregnant with Eric is when I stopped substituting because they figured it was better not to be around all the little kids than that, you know. So my grandmother was living with my mother, and she would babysit for our girls while I taught. And I substituted for, I guess, about 3 years, I guess it was.
After college, I went back home, back to New Jersey, started working for my father in construction work. He did mostly marine construction of docks and piers, bulkheads, and I enjoyed it, but my father could see that as I was going along that I was getting a little impatient, and I really wanted to do more. But my father, I think, was a very wise man and knew that I needed a little bit more freedom. And so 4 years after graduating from college, he set up, or with me set up, a partnership where we had a business where he and I were equal partners. So he owned all the equipment, he owned the real estate where the office was, and then the partnership would rent the equipment from my father, and we started working like that. And we did jobs during that year. And at the end of 1 year, my father said, well, all the rent that we had paid to him for the equipment could be considered purchase. And so now I own the equipment. Not a lot, but a couple of cranes, dozer, a few trucks, and a lot of small equipment. And so 5 years after college now, I've got my own business. And things went along pretty well, but I can tell you that I've known what it's like to be on top of the world. I've also known what it's like to be at the bottom of the heap. So by 1969, I was anxious again to do something a little bit out of the ordinary. And the state of Delaware had never done much about protecting their beaches, and it was to extend 9 different seawalls, and they wanted them all extended farther out to sea to stop a current. And so I bid the job and started the job, but just before starting it, a storm came along. The beach kept changing, and every one of those 9 locations I had to put in a lot more trestle than I expected to. So by the end of the job, I had lost so much money that there was practically little left for the business. There was no cash left, and I went to work for another contractor. Somebody who had a a pretty good business, growing all the time in southern New Jersey. He had 200 employees, and he hired me to be the manager of his marine construction division at a salary plus profit sharing. Okay, great. And we started out, and we got a few jobs, and I could see that they were making money, so everything looks good. Well, after 3 months, I could see what the records were and see how much we made, but then we had a meeting and talked about how much of the profit I would get, and we looked at the statements. The only statement I saw then didn't show any profit. At the end of 6 months, same thing. So after a year of no profits, I decided that was about enough and went back into business for myself with one little crane and no employees. Did that for a few years. This is now through the 1970s. And gradually built it back up. I had about 30, 35 employees or so. But then I had one job where it was to rebuild the steel pier in Atlantic City. Some of the concrete was deteriorating, and a big part of the pier had been damaged in some storms. And the owners wanted me to rebuild the pier. However, I looked at it and said, the job's too big, I can't afford to do this. And they offered to give me a big advance so I could have money to get materials ahead of time, and they said they would pay me every 2 weeks if I would do the job. However, as the job went along, the payments became slower and slower and slower. So they finally opened in the summer, and I'm still waiting for my, well, about $100,000 in payments. And a hurricane came along and damaged all of the work that had been done. They were now out of business, they were out of money, and I was out of money. Back where I was a few years ago, nothing. And so I've known what it was like to be on top of the world, to have quite a few employees, to have a few cranes working for me, and seeing things happening in different places along the coast, out of the state. And now I'm back to having nothing again.
He's much more patient, even with big children, than I am. And when our kids were little, he worked a lot, but they went with him. And our girls will tell you, what did they nail? Boards on the Ventnor fishing pier for 50 cents an hour? But he took the kids with him, and he always
pay him.
Yeah, you did pay him something, because they yelled if you didn't. He always explained everything to them, and he does that with our great-grandson, Finn. He'll tell him, you know, I would never think to tell a little kid, why does the excavator work that way? But he does. He's very patient. One time we were down there, and Finn has, what's he call it? It's like a little Jeep that runs on a battery. And he knows he's only allowed to go so far, so he was riding this thing around her yard, and he got it stuck in a hole. So we were just going in the driveway, and so Ken got out, and he lifted the thing up and pulled it out of the hole. Finn had to go back and look and see why it got stuck in that hole. And he goes in another hole, and he just goes like this, Ken, come get me. And he did. But he's very good at explaining things and very patient.
Many times I had thought, when times got slow, that maybe I was being called into something different and didn't recognize it. And I'd always wanted to have more of an understanding of the Bible, and about learned as much as I could where I was. And my brother-in-law suggested to me that I could learn more by going to a school in Philadelphia called Reformed Episcopal Seminary. It's for training ministers. And I talked with one of the professors at the seminary, who said to me, well, he said, all of our courses are in the morning. He said, instead of just taking one course or two courses, you could take a full load. And you could still be home in the afternoon to run your business. So I decided that that's what I would do. So I became a full-time student in seminary. In November, they finally got to the juniors, and my turn came up to preach in a chapel service. I put all this preparation in my 10-minute sermon. And during that sermon, I just had a feeling come upon me, can't really describe it, of calmness. And I felt like this is what I have to do. I have to preach. And so I continued on for the 3 years and finished and got my degree. My business, however, kind of disappeared on me. By the end of the year, there just was no business left. So now I'm back in the same position. Now I'm a full-time student. I had 2 daughters in college at the time, and a third one just about ready to start. Finished seminary in 1983, and during seminary, there was a church in Ventnor, New Jersey, not far from my home, whose pastor had died, and they were looking for somebody just to preach every Sunday. It was a small church, mostly senior citizens, and they just wanted somebody to preach on Sundays. And somebody there in that church knew that I was going to the seminary, and so they asked if I could come and preach. And so beginning in 1981, while I was a student for 2 years, I preached in that church every Sunday. When I graduated, I took on the responsibility of starting a church in Rochester, New York. We met in a library in the town of Greece, which is northwest of Rochester. And then I put a down payment on a house. My house was mortgaged for more money than it was worth because I borrowed extra money to pay off debts of the business. And so I could not afford to sell the house for below a certain point. And then the house had not sold, and realized it was not going to sell for the price I needed, and so I had to resign that. So here I am again, 1984. No job, no income. Back to the way life had been a couple of times before. There was a bridge near our home. It was all of timber, and people around there called it the Rickety Bridge because when you drove over it, the boards all rumbled, the decking boards rumbled as you drove across them. Well, there'd been a fire, and about half the bridge burned down. And the state was anxious to get it replaced as quick as possible. They took bids on an emergency job to get it done. And a big company from Philadelphia was a low bidder. Well, talked with somebody there, and then ended up talking to the owner, who explained to me they were a completely union company, so they couldn't just hire somebody off the street. But they knew of a little bit of my background, so they asked me to be the project engineer. I said, okay, but I don't work on Sundays. And I said, I have one more problem. And that's because for years I'd wanted to go to Norway but never had. But an uncle of my wife's had given us the money that we could both go, and we'd already made our reservations, and so regardless of whether I was working or not, 17th of August we were going to go to Norway. And he said, that's fine. He said, there's a bonus in the job if we get done early, and we're going to collect 2 weeks bonus, so we're going to get it done on the 17th. And we did finish by the 17th. And the company got a big bonus. And then they said, well, when you come back from Norway, come up to Philadelphia and see us. Maybe we can fit you in somewhere. So we came back from Norway, went up for a meeting, and they hired me. So I worked in the city of Philadelphia for 2 years. And I worked on some other jobs in Pennsylvania and Maryland, and in fact New York, but not long at any one place. And then went to work for a company, this is now 1986, in southern New Jersey, that was growing, that was starting to do marine construction and other heavy construction. They wanted to get into bridge building, and they hired me to be a project manager and estimator, and worked for that company for 15 years. And then in 2001, decided it's time to slow down a bit. Now I'm 63 years old, starting to look towards retirement, but can't afford to yet. And decided I need to do something a little bit less stressful because it seemed like for 15 years I was always working against deadlines, trying to get bids turned in, trying to get jobs done on time. So I became a chief estimator for an asphalt paving company without any experience in asphalt paving. Did that for 3 years. So now I'm ready to retire, ready to get out my rocking chair, but I don't have a rocking chair. So I guess I have to go buy one. But instead of going and buy one, I thought about the days when I was in college, and I took all those history classes, thinking that maybe if other things don't work out, I'll become a history teacher. And I wondered, What would it have been like to have been a history teacher? Will I ever know? Maybe I'll find out if I start substitute teaching. So, I found out what it takes to become a substitute. Took a little course from the IU-13. Took another little course from Octorara School District. And started substituting in Octorara and in Lampeter, Strasbourg. Did that for several years. And wasn't getting a lot of time in then. My time was being cut less and less, and so I started coming to Conestoga Valley a few days now and then. And, well, I guess that was the beginning of a love affair between me and the school and the people here. And so now this has been, well, I'm not sure which year I started here in Conestoga Valley, but it's been 12 years since I started substituting, but now I get to be here almost every day.
He's never home now.
We don't do a whole lot together.
Yeah, we do. Well, we shop. We go out to dinner Friday nights. We go to visit the kids. We go for rides sometimes. We used to do that a lot more than we do now. I've been on a lot more rides around Lancaster County than he has because he's never home. So, right?
Yeah, occasionally we just get in the car and we'll go just drive somewhere and not pay attention to where we're going, just say, okay, take this road, take this road. We'll see some farms and just some things. We like looking at old houses, you know, dreamy kind of thing. We're not going to buy one.
We go ice cream every Wednesday night in the summer with friends from Sons of Norway.
Yeah, we sit on the deck at Oregon Dairy every Wednesday night. Also, my love of music allowed me to find out that here in Lancaster we have a barbershop chorus, which there was no such thing back where I used to live. So I joined the Red Rose Chorus and sang with them for quite a few years. I'm still a member there, but have not sung regularly for more than a year now. My voice has gotten to the point where I can't hold my breath as long as I'm supposed to, and it's just a little bit of work. And so I keep my membership there. I still like singing, and occasionally, in fact, just a few weeks ago, I went to a rehearsal with them just to be with the guys, and because I enjoy singing.
That was a juicy one. All I want for Christmas is my two front teeth, my two front teeth, see my two front teeth. Gee, if I could only have my two front teeth, then I could can't sing that high. Grit, grit.